listening to Curtis Hudson. Bobby pulled it up on his cell phone, sing that song, I'm on the winning side. It just thrills me to hear that old preacher sing that. And there he was dying with prostate cancer. And he just said, I don't sing because I can sing. He said, I just sing because I want to. And he sung that old song, I'm on the winning side. And I hope that you're on that winning side tonight. You ready for it?
Thank you, Clark.
Now, we are brave here in the choir. Sometimes we'll take a song that we haven't sung that many times, and we'll just say, well, let's sing this tonight. But I happen to know that this is a favorite song of the pastor, and it certainly applies to me in my life. It says, he didn't throw the clay away. What an absolutely beautiful song. It's track number 5 on that CD. And I'm so glad he didn't. Amen. Thank you, Lord, for saving my soul. Stand with us. We've got a song that we sing, and you folks don't have to stand because I know that John David's got a lot of territory to cover here in Israel, but this is a song that it's just a praise chorus that I just enjoy singing. Sometimes I love to sing without having a songbook in front of me, just sing from your heart. Amen. And this song is just called Thank You, Lord, for Saving My Soul. And if you know it, just sing along with us. Thank you, Lord, for saving my soul. Thank you, Lord, for making me whole. Thank you, Lord, for giving to me thy great salvation, so rich and free. Could you sing it one more time, please? Thank you, Lord, for saving my soul. Thank you, Lord, for making me whole. Thank you, Lord, for giving to me thy great salvation, so rich and free. Choir's coming down. If you want to stand for a minute, stretch your legs. Good evening, and we welcome you again to Oakland Avenue Baptist Church and those that are visiting with us tonight. We're so glad that you chose to come and be with us this evening, and boy, I tell you, I appreciate the goodness of God in the morning service. Amen. You know, God's wanting to do something. How many of you believe that? Amen. And if we'll just take that step of old Peter this morning. Obedience. Obedience. Just man, oh man, oh man. There might be 4 or 5 more messages in that chapter. I don't know. I tell you, I don't think you ever get all the juice out of one verse or one portion of Scripture. But on Wednesday night, we started last Wednesday night on a study on spiritual warfare. And I'm convinced the average person sitting in a pew in America don't understand the warfare we're in. And if you go on YouTube, Oakland Avenue Baptist Church, go to our website, pull up the YouTube, go
on it, and you can watch. I'd encourage you to go watch last Wednesday night's Bible study. And I'm glad that God saved me for victory, not to be run over by the world, the devil, and the flesh. I tell you what, I believe God saved me to enjoy the journey. I'm a winner anyway. If I die, I'm a winner. If I live, I'm a winner. Listen to me. If you like me, I'm a winner. And if you don't like me, I'm a winner. If I got money, I'm a winner. And if I don't have money, I've got a winner, because John David's got money. And if he's got money, I got money. Amen. But I tell you, God's good. Amen. I appreciate the goodness of the Lord. If our men will come, we'll receive our Sunday evening giving. You give as the Lord has blessed and prospered you. And we're going to turn it right over to John David and let him tell us about our trip. I was there, but I'm excited to see it again. Amen. Let's ask the blessing on the giving. Brother Charles, would you pray for us?
Our Father, in Jesus' name, we thank you, Lord, once again for this day that you've given us. We thank you for the opportunity we have to gather again this evening. Yes. And Father, we thank you for the wonderful morning you gave us. Yes. And Lord, we look forward to a great evening tonight. And I pray, Lord, to take our time together, speak to our heart. And Lord, tonight I pray that you'll just show us something tonight, Lord, that will draw us closer to you. Yes. Father, that's my desire this year, just a closer walk with you.
Yes.
Father, I pray tonight, Lord,
yes.
What's needed, Lord, that I can have that walk that you want me to have with you. Yes. Because, Lord, I know you want a fellowship with me. And Lord, I just pray tonight, God, you be at the offering tonight. I pray that you bless it. I pray that you use it for the advancement and furtherance of your kingdom and gospel. And Lord, be with our visitors and those that are with us this evening. I pray, Lord, a special blessing upon them. And I pray, Lord, they'll understand and know tonight how much they're loved and appreciated for being here. And I pray, Lord, you take our time together and speak to our heart. Be Brother John, pray you help him tonight. And Lord, may the Spirit of God, may the power of God fall and rest upon this place tonight. And God will give you glory, praise, and honor for all that you do, because we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Before John David comes, what is February the 10th? Don't break the heart of who? I promised you, I'd remind you, I just looked at my phone there in the calendar, you've got 5 weeks to work, plant some seed, water it, witness, and get somebody to the Lord. If you can't get them to the Lord, get them to church on that Sunday. Yes. With enthusiasm like that, we're bound to turn this world upside down. Are we going to do it?
Yes. Amen.
What does Nike say? You know what Brother Yelton's going to say? Just do it. Come on, John David.
Amen. I'm going to stand out here. I want to say just a couple of things. I want to say thank you to the church again. I've said it before, but I want to say it again, for giving me this experience. This experience would not have been possible were it not for you and your generous giving toward allowing me to go on this trip. And so I hope that we can give you a little bit about what we experienced on our trip, and that's what we're going to try to do tonight. I want to say a couple of other thank yous. My parents are here, so I want to thank them for being here tonight. And the Williams family is here. They went with us too, but apparently they want to go back with us again on our journey tonight. And so I want to thank them for being here as well. I was in their church last Sunday night, and so we're glad to have them with us tonight. And I'll tell one little tale on myself before I start the presentation. Dewey was giving me a hard time Wednesday night, and he said these presentations have not worked before. And he said, is yours going to work? And I said, mine's going to work. Now, the Bible says pride goes before destruction. And I got in here tonight, and a couple of pictures weren't loading up, and I had it double backed up. And things weren't weren't loading up, but it looks like it's working. So, and I've actually, while the choir was singing, normally I'd sing with the choir, I was looking sure to make sure all the pictures were going to show up. So I think everything's going to work tonight. So what we're going to try to do is just show you what we did day by day, the places that we went, and some of the things that we saw. There's no way that I could show you every picture that I took, or even tell you about everything that we did, but we'll tell you about some of the things that we did. And I'm going to sit down right here so I can run this, and I'll get out of everybody's way so you can see. But we started our journey from right here in the church parking lot. I should have asked for a group picture. We took a group picture, and I didn't get one for some reason, but we came to Charlotte International Airport. And we left in the evening, and it's almost a 9-hour flight to Munich, Germany. And from Germany, we're going to fly to Tel Aviv, and this flight takes about 3.5 hours. And the plane that we were on is the plane that's on the left. I took another picture of a plane landing, but we flew with a German airliner, and we had a rough trip across the Atlantic. It felt like we bounced across the Atlantic on the way over. And I remember when we got into Germany and we got on the second plane, I didn't take any pictures from there. One of the flight attendants asked one of the girls that was with us, said, "How was your flight?" And she said, "Well, there was a lot of turbulence." And the flight attendant said, "Oh." It's like she didn't hardly know what to say. But we made it over safely, and we got there, and you can see the smiles on our face because we're happy to be on the ground. We touched down at Tel Aviv about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and this is in the airport. We got our picture made there. There's me and the pastor, and I wanted to show you a picture of this. One of the other things that you have to do when you're arriving in Israel is to go through passport patrol. And this is not just, there are many people in this picture that are in our group, but this is not just our group. This is a lot of different people that are coming into the country, and so it was very, very crowded as you were having your passport checked before you were actually able to go into the country of Israel. And we finally got through that. We loaded our bus at the airport, and we went to the Hotel Herod in Tel Aviv. We joked about some of the names of some of the hotels. We saw one named Lot, and we said, "Why in the world would you name a hotel Lot?" And Pastor Perry said, "I wouldn't name one Herod," but that's where we stayed the first night. And we spent our first night staying on the Mediterranean Sea. And so here's the beach on the Mediterranean at night, and one of the docks that we went out by. And then I took this picture in the morning from our hotel room, and it was just a beautiful view and a beautiful place to be, and just I don't know if I've ever seen bluer water than we saw there. And here is, I believe this was taken from the dining room where we ate, and so we took a picture of it. And from there, on our first day, we left, and we loaded the bus, and we were on our way to the port of Joppa. They say it Jaffa, but the port of Joppa, we know it as from the Bible. And one of the things that was really interesting when we were there at the port of Joppa was they had all these little spots on the ground out there that you could see, and it told you the distances to different places. So it shows you there how far we are from Tel Aviv, and it showed you distances to different major cities. But of course, this is the port of Joppa. And here's another picture of the port, and we know that when Jonah ran for the Lord, instead of going to Nineveh, Jonah went to Joppa. And Jonah comes down to the city center, and down to the harbor, and down to the boat, and then down in the hold of the boat, and down in the fish, and then down to the bottom of the water. And I told him this morning, we talked a little bit about Jonah, used him as an example in the message. He had a foam blubber mattress down there that he was on in the belly of the fish. But this is Joppa. This is where Jonah ran to. And here's Brother Ralph and one of our guides, George, teaching here. And you can see there's a large group of us that have traveled with us. I believe it was about 120. Is that right, Pastor? 120 that traveled with us on on our trip. We also learned while we were in Joppa that the cedars of Lebanon that Solomon used to build the temple came through the port of Joppa. And so we learned quite a bit. Now this church that you're going to see right here, this church on the hill is the home, would have been where the home of Simon the tanner was, and that's where Peter stayed. And he stays there in the home of Simon the tanner, and there he has his vision for the Gentiles, the vision of the clean and the unclean foods. And we also know that Tabitha and Dorcas lived in Joppa. So if you'll notice the church there with the long tower on the hill, we didn't go up there, but we took a picture of it from the distance. That's the home of Simon the tanner. And so we then loaded back on the bus after we had finished in Joppa, and we made our way to the Valley of Elah. And the Valley of Elah is where the battle of David and Goliath took place. And right here you'll see a picture of the brook where David would have picked up those 5 smooth stones. And I brought some of the things I brought back with me, and I'll share with you about those a little bit later. But I picked up 5 stones. I didn't pick up rocks everywhere we went. We had some people that, Pastor Perry's in that picture, he picked up a lot of rocks. I think he may have had to leave some things behind to bring his rocks home. But I picked up 5 stones while I was there, and I've got those at home. Now, if you want to know what those 5 stones are, Brother Ralph has talked about this before. You've heard him say that. It's God is, God can, God will, God has, and God does. Those are the 5 stones that David picked up there in the Valley of Elah. And here's another picture from that valley. And so we spent just a little bit of time there and had a teaching with Brother Ralph, and then it was time to load back on the buses again, and we ate lunch. And I know this kind of seems like a strange picture, but we ate lunch at a kibbutz lahav, and the reason that I included this picture is because this is taken from where we were eating our lunch, and this is the Israeli-Palestinian border wall that you see right here. And so we were very close to the border wall. We passed it on our way. Some of the pictures I took out of the bus window weren't too good, but this was a pretty good picture so that you could see the border wall there. So I thought it was really interesting. This was where we had our lunch on that first day. And from there, again, we loaded our buses, and we headed to Beersheba. Beersheba, we know, is the home of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And we took some pictures of some different things here. I believe this is a pomegranate tree. You can see them there in the tops of the trees. And so I wanted to take a picture and show you that. And then when we first came in, one of the first things we saw, this is actually a reproduction, but it's a reproduction of an altar. And you've read about it in the Bible, talking about holding on to the 4 horns of the altar. And so this is what the altar would have looked like. And there's Brother Ralph who's teaching us. And one of the things that he taught us is that altar was a place of safety. And so if a person is in distress, if they're under attack, they'd come in and they'd kneel down and they'd hold on to the horns of the altar. And that was a place of safety for them. And so there's Brother Ralph teaching there at the altar. And one of the things that he stressed to us all the way through, and one of the things that has been so real to me after I returned home, when you read the Bible in a different way. Amen. When you see all of these things. And he said, if you want to see your Bible come alive, he said, we're going to see our Bibles come alive, because he said, this is the home of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And he said, up on the hill, there's something you're going to see. And I've got one more picture before I do that. I'm getting ahead of myself. This is Hanny, our tour guide that was on our bus, and he's talking to us there, and he's doing some teaching there. But Brother Ralph told us, he said, now, if you want to go up on the hill and see the ruins of Beersheba, he said, here's where you're going to see your Bible come alive. In Genesis, it teaches that Abraham dug a well at Beersheba. And in Genesis chapter 26 and verse 25, it tells us that Isaac reopened that well. And he built an altar there. And he called on the name of the Lord. and he pitched his tent there. And this is where Isaac reopened the well. And so one of the first things that we saw when we got up to the top of the hill is this well. And so we've got a few pictures of the well there. You can see it as it would look from the outside, and then there's at the top is a picture on the inside, and then this on the bottom right-hand side is a watering trough where they would water their animals. And so I thought it was just fascinating to be able to see this well where Isaac's servants reopened the well there. And here we have I tried to get to the highest point of a lot of these places to take a picture so you could see the ruins of Beersheba. And so here we have a picture, kind of an overview of the ruins of Beersheba. One of the other things that we got to see that was really neat while we were there, while Ralph was talking to us, there were some camels there. Some of you commented about the pictures of the camels that we had. This was at Beersheba where we were at. And you can see the camels up there on the top. And then we saw some shepherds that were out with their sheep. And by this time they had led their sheep back, and they had them in a sheep pen there, and there's the sheepdog on the other side. But one of the things that we noticed about these shepherds and their sheep, a shepherd leads his sheep. He doesn't drive them. He leads them. And those shepherds, they got out in front of and walked out in front of their sheep, and they led them right back into the sheepfold, into the pen. And so we enjoyed seeing that. And so these are some of the things that we saw in Beersheba. Now we're going to get back on the bus, and we're going to start to go down, literally. As we start making our way to the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is the lowest place on earth, and it's about 1,388 feet below sea level. And these pictures are taken at the overlook of the Dead Sea. And this is 177 meters below sea level. That's a little over 580 feet below sea level. And so here is an overlook of the Dead Sea. This is a view from the overlook of the Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea is approximately 8.6 times saltier than an ocean. And so these conditions make it impossible for any living creature to be able to live in the waters. And so that's how it got its name, the Dead Sea. And I want you to notice in these pictures how the water level at the Dead Sea has been receding. And I did some research on this. The Dead Sea has been receding at a rate of up to 1 meter every year. And this is due to water that's being diverted from the Jordan River for agricultural purposes. And it's called an evaporation caused by the Dead Sea mineral works. All these things are causing the Dead Sea to evaporate. But this fulfills prophecy. The prophecy in Ezekiel 47. And so after we leave the Dead Sea overlook where we're here, we're going to head to our hotel, the Hotel Daniel on the Dead Sea. And when you go down to the Dead Sea, it's almost like a resort area. It's very beautiful down in there. We spent the night, and now we're ready to start our next day. And the very first place we went is to Masada. This is the place where Herod the Great built palaces on the mountain between 37 and 31 BC. And it's on top of a mountain, and we had to take a cable car. We rode a cable car up to the top of Masada so that we could see this mountain fortress. And I really didn't know anything about this, but this is a very famous place in Israeli and Jewish history. And this is the model of what that mountain fortress would have looked like. And we got to see all the different, we got to see the ruins of Herod's castle and all the different things that were built there, and all the different things that they had. And it would take too much time to show you all the different pictures of all the things that we saw. But here we are, and here's a picture, sort of an overview of Masada. And this is King Herod's King Herod the Great's castle. This is a model of what it would have looked like. And we know from history that the Roman legion surrounded Masada, and they laid siege to it. And they built a ramp to the top, and that picture down there on the bottom left is the ramp that they built to get up to the top to lay siege to Masada. And so, and this is Pastor Perry Cleek. If you don't know Pastor Perry, that's Pastor Perry on the other side of me there with Pastor Yelton and myself. And so it was a very interesting, very educational visit, the time that we got to spend in Masada. And we spent a lot of time with our guides, and they told us a lot about the area there. We then are ready now to load the bus again, and we're heading to En-Gedi. And En-Gedi is the land of the wild goats. Now, I will tell you that at the time that we were there, there was a drought. This is the rainy season. The time that we were there, it's the rainy season in Israel, but we did not see a lot of rain at all while we were there. It rained on us just a few times, but it didn't rain on us very much at all. And so we didn't see many goats. And the pastor said, "Have you seen any goats?" Well, when we first pulled in on the boat, I saw a few, but we didn't see very many at all. And this picture on the bottom right-hand side is from the overlook. This is the overlook, looking over toward David's waterfall and the cave where David hid from King Saul. We had a wonderful teaching from Brother Ralph here. This picture at the bottom is a large acacia tree. And Brother Ralph taught about making an arrow, and that's what you see up here at the top. And a lot of you followed our trip on Facebook, and you probably saw a little clip of his teaching from up here. But we had a wonderful teaching about the acacia tree and about making an arrow. And then some of us had the opportunity to go on a hike while we were there. And we hiked up to the cave of En-Gedi. Some folks went to the mineral works where they make the Dead Sea minerals. That's why I didn't bring anything back, Mom. I didn't go up there with them. I went to hike to the cave. But we were able to go on a hike here. And it was not an easy hike, let's put it that way, but we hiked up to the cave and David's waterfall in En-Gedi. And so here it is, the waterfall where David rested and where he was hiding out from King Saul. And we had some wonderful teaching from one of the other pastors that was up there, and we were able to see the cave where David was in hiding from King Saul. The Bible says that Saul went to cover his feet up in the cave. There's the cave, and that David was hiding up there in that same cave, and he reached through and he cut off the hem of his robe. He cut the tassel off of his robe. And one of the things that we found out, there were some in our group that were brave enough to go up in the cave, and that was illegal as well. But anyway, some of them went up in the cave. I didn't attempt that. But what you can see, if you'll notice, that cave is divided into two parts. There is a rock wall that's in the middle, and they tell me if you go up in the cave, there's a hole in that wall. And so David could have been on one side, King Saul could have been on the other, and David could have just reached through with that knife, cut the tassel off of his robe. And so this was the cave where David was in hiding. You get up there, it was a hot, hard journey to get up there. But when you get up there, it's cool. The water's refreshing. Some of the best water in Israel, they say, is right there coming out of that waterfall. It's cool down there around the waterfall. They say it's even cooler in the cave. The Lord was taking care of David. He put him up there in the air conditioning. Let him rest up there while he's hiding out from King Saul. Then we were able, after we had our experience here at En-Gedi, we returned back to the hotel for lunch, and we had a little bit of free time. And the pastor kept asking me, "Are you going to go down and get in the Dead Sea?" And so I went down and got in the Dead Sea. And again, there's so much salt in the Dead Sea. I'm not sitting on a float or anything like that. You can just get in there and lay back and float. And you can rest right there on top of the water. There's that much salt. And they've got little ramps and little walkways going down in there. And honestly, I don't know how the salt, you could see the crystallized salt on those ramps and walkways. And even when you walked on the ground in that water, that you could feel that it was almost like walking on gravel or something, the crystallized salt that was on the bottom of the Dead Sea. So we had a good time taking a dip there in the Dead Sea. And then we returned back to our hotel for the night, and we're going to begin our next day. The next day, we went to Qumran. Qumran is where the Dead Sea Scrolls are found. And you've got two pictures of brother. You got a picture of Brother Ralph, and this is Brother Donnie down here on the left-hand side. And but what I want you to notice is all the greenhouses behind Brother Ralph, where the Dead Sea is receding. They're planting all kinds of different fruits and vegetables all throughout. And we tried to take pictures from the bus. Some of those pictures didn't turn out very well, but we just drove past groves and groves and groves of fruits and all kinds of different things growing. The desert is blooming. And again, when you read your Bible and you go there and see it, you're seeing prophecy being fulfilled when you're looking out there at the desert and you're seeing it blooming out there. This is the cave where the scrolls were found. And the story is told that a shepherd boy was looking for a lost sheep, and he threw a rock up into the cave trying to run the sheep out, and he heard something break, and those scrolls were discovered. And there were some other pictures I could have put in here. I didn't include them, but there's also a scriptorium here. This was a place where they would have copied the scriptures, and this was the Essene quarter, and they would have been or this was the Essenes would have been there, and this is where they would have been copying those scriptures. There at Qumran, at the Dead Sea. And so this is the cave where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. And then from there we moved on. Now, I don't know if I can say this or not. Qasr el-Yad. This is the Jordan River. And again, we talked about they're pumping water out of the Jordan to irrigate crops. Both Jordan and Israel is doing this. And so the Jordan River is not near the river that it once was. It was at the time of Christ, or at the time that the Israelites would have crossed. But we traveled through the West Bank, and we traveled to the place on the Jordan River where Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. And this is also where Elisha and Elijah parted the Jordan River. And we had a wonderful service here. This is the place where the pastor talks about that in the early days, whenever he was going over to the Holy Land, they would stop at this place on the side of the road, and they had a gate there, and Brother Ralph would get off the bus, and he'd have a few $100 bills in his hand, and he'd shake hands with a soldier, and they'd open the gate, and then they'd allow him to go down in there into the Jordan River in this area right here. And now it's built up, it's developed, and they have a place where people can be baptized. They have a wonderful chapel up there. One of the services that will forever stand out in my mind took place there, and I tried to take some pictures in there, and I situated myself in the middle aisle, and I thought I had a good place to take pictures, and Ralph's cameraman was in my way the entire time. So I didn't have any pictures from the service, but we had a wonderful service here, and it was just such a blessing. This is one of the places that will always stand out to me. I want you to notice the bell tower on the left-hand side. The bell tower is the place where they say that Elijah was taken up in the whirlwind. And I also want you to notice, if you'll see right there in front of the bell tower, that's the Jordanian flag. And so when you cross the river, you're in another country. You're in the country of Jordan. And if you'll look under this little place that's built right here, you'll notice a soldier that's sitting under the shed. And there was an Israeli soldier sitting on the side that we were on. They didn't want anybody crossing into Jordan. And so they had soldiers there that we noticed. And actually, I wouldn't have noticed that soldier if somebody hadn't pointed him out to me. But we had a wonderful time here at the Jordan River. Then from there, we're going to make our way to Jericho. We learned that Jericho is both the oldest city and the lowest city on earth. And it's located in the Rift Valley. And does anybody know what this is? I know the pastor does. Anybody else? He's shown this picture before. This is the Valley of the Shadow of Death that we're looking at here. And so we had a teaching from Brother Ralph here. And then we went down the hill, and we were out literally when we came to this place. Brother Ralph said to us over and over again. So we're not going on a place where a normal tour would go. We're using the Bible as our roadmap, and we're going to go to these different places that we read about in our Bibles. And so we literally backed our buses on a little bitty, barely even a road to go back to the Valley of the Shadow of Death. There's no walls, no nothing. They said, now you be careful when you get out here on the edge of this area because you can fall off down in there. There wasn't anything to keep you from falling off down in there. But we brought gifts. You supported the suitcases that were taken over with us to the Holy Land, and we brought gifts to the Bedouin children here, and so here we are in Jericho bringing those gifts to the children. From there, we stayed in Jericho. We ate lunch in Jericho. I believe I told you on Wednesday night that we ate at the Temptation Restaurant. I don't think I'll ever forget the name of that restaurant. And right across the road from the Temptation Restaurant is the Elisha Springs. And this is the Elisha Springs Fountain. And 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 21 tells about Elisha healing the springs. It says, and he went forth unto the spring of water and cast the salt in there, and said, thus saith the Lord, I have healed these waters. There shall not be from thence any more death or barren land. And so this is the Elisha Springs Fountain. The springs are still there. The springs were across the road, but they pumped the water out of the springs into this fountain, and so we had a wonderful time here. Another thing that we really enjoyed while we were in Jericho, there was a man there that had a camel, and he was giving camel rides. This is Miss Bernie. Many of you saw and heard about Miss Bernie through Facebook or heard about Miss Bernie. She's 90 years old, traveled with us to the Holy Land, and there she is. She said, I'm going to ride that camel. And so there she is riding that camel. She was a phenomenal person to get to know, and she talked about she walked, was it 2 miles a day to get ready to travel with us, and we had a great time getting to know her, and she left with us from Charlotte, traveled all the way over with us, traveled all the way back to Charlotte with us, and we had a great time getting to know her. Then we went to the ruins of old Jericho, and this is from the restaurant across the road. I went up on the top floor, and we took a picture. These are the ruins of old Jericho, and here you'll see a little portion of the walls that came tumbling down in Jericho, and we had a wonderful time there in Jericho. Now, when you're in Jericho, you're in Palestinian territory, and there is a marked difference in the way the roads are built, the way the people live between Israel and Jericho, or in the Palestinian Palestinian state. And we got up on the top of the hill out here in the ruins of old Jericho, and it was time for the Muslim prayer. And they broadcast those prayers. You think about if we would, as a church, if we'd have prayer in the middle of the day at lunchtime, and we'd broadcast those prayers across Johnson City, what effect that might have. We wonder why the Muslim religion has the impact that it has today. Well, you do that, and I'd say you'd have an impact as well. But we got up on the hill, and I've got some video of that. I didn't put it in there, but you could hear them broadcasting those prayers, and I remember that. Also, another thing that we've talked to you about just recently, this is the mountain of temptation, the mountain where Jesus went and was tempted of the devil. And this is, you'll see down here at the bottom, this is a monastery on the side of the mountain. And I believe if you were going to go to the monastery, we didn't go, you had to take a cable car, or most people would take a cable car to be able to go up there to it. And then he talked to us, Pastor, do you remember what he talked about, what was on top of the mountain? Because there's something on top of the mountain too, but I don't remember what he told us. I don't remember either, but there is something on top of the mountain as well. And you can sort of see the outline of it up there on the top of the mountain. This was our time in old Jericho. We went from there. Our last stop of the day was at Bet-shean. 1 Samuel chapter 31, verses 10 through 13 says this is where the Philistines hung the bodies of Saul and his sons. And you can see the Colosseum that's here. And we were able to look over into the town of Bet-shean, but we weren't actually able to go into it because just like we have in the United States, they have a time change, and they were on winter time, and so some things close earlier. So we had spent time in other places, and so we didn't get to go over there, but we were able to go over and look down into where Bet-shean was and see the mountain where they would have pinned Saul and Jonathan on the side of the mountain. That was the way that we ended our day. And our next day started with a bus ride to the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee. We went through the area of the Gadarenes. This is the place where Jesus cast the legion of demons into the herd of the pigs, and they ran into the sea. And from the boat, we could see the city of Magdala. We could see the Mount of Beatitudes. We could see a little town called Zaphat. And we believe this is the town that Jesus pointed to when he said a city that's set on a hill cannot be hidden. And our boat landed in Gennesaret. We went the opposite way that they normally travel. You normally travel from the other side. We traveled to the other side of the Sea of Galilee and traveled back across. But we had a wonderful experience traveling, and I believe this boat was the King David that we traveled on. And we had just had a wonderful time riding the boat across the Sea of Galilee and had a wonderful service there. And it just really changes when you start reading in Matthew about the disciples being on the Sea of Galilee. It gives you a totally different perspective when you've been able to see and been able to be on the sea yourself. And so we had a wonderful time there. And after we traveled across the Sea of Galilee, we went to the Jesus Boat Museum, and here we were able to see a 2,000-year-old fishing boat that was found in the sea, and it was brought out in 1986. And, we don't know who this boat belonged to. These are the questions, the mystery of the 2,000-year-old boat. Who did the boat belong to? Did it belong to Jesus and his disciples? Did it belong to the fighters in the Migdal battle, or to the fishermen from the Sea of Galilee? But this is a 2,000-year-old boat that we were able to see in the Jesus Boat Museum. We then made our way to the Mount of Beatitudes in another special service. This was underneath the awning where we had our service, and we just had, the Lord just really blessed us while we were on the Mount of Beatitudes. And this was just a beautiful, beautiful place to see. All the beautiful flowers and trees that were here. It was just absolutely gorgeous. And one of the other things that we were able to see, this is the Sea of Galilee. And at we were told by Brother Ralph at the bottom of the mountain, Ralph talked about the fact that they checked the acoustics of this area, and that Jesus could stand at the bottom by the water, and because of the way his voice would bounce off the water, his voice would carry to the top because of the way the sound waves bounced off of the water. And so this is Jesus, this is the Mountain of Beatitudes where Jesus preached. And again, you're going to see the church that was here. It was just a very beautiful building. And again, you can see all the beautiful landscape. And we had a service here, and then we had some time to go out and be able to spend some time on the Mount of Beatitudes. And what a wonderful time it was. Our next stop is Capernaum, the town of Jesus. And this is the synagogue that we were able to see here in Capernaum. This is where Jesus gave his teaching on I am the bread of life here in Capernaum. And here's another church, and this church is unique because this church is built on top of the foundation of the house where Jesus healed Peter's mother-in-law. And when you go inside the church, you're able to see the foundation of the house. This picture is actually taken from the inside of the church where you could look down on the foundation of the house that would have been Peter's mother-in-law's house. And now it's lunchtime, and this is one of the favorite things that folks always talk about when we make a trip to the Holy Land. Lunch today was Peter's fish. Now, the pastor and I didn't order the whole fish. We ordered the fillets, but Pastor Perry ordered the whole fish, and so we took a picture of his so you could see Peter's fish, and it was really entertaining to watch all the folks around with their cell phones taking pictures of their food. You know, a lot of people do that. It was very entertaining to see everybody taking pictures of their food before we got ready to eat Peter's fish. This is tilapia, and it was very good. Even though we didn't get the whole fish, we got the fillets. Our next stop after lunch was Magdala. And these ruins have only been excavated since 2006. They were digging for a hotel that they were going to put up. And as they were digging, they hit the stone that the scriptures would have been laid on in the synagogue of Magdala, and they discovered that this town was here. So it's just been here for a short period of time, and this is probably my favorite place of any place that we've been. And I'll explain why in just a few minutes. This is the synagogue at Magdala. And you can see here, if you'll notice, well, you don't see it real well, but yeah, you can kind of see it in the middle. Let me stand up right here. If you'll see right here in the middle, this is where the stone would have been that they would have hit right there in the middle. That's the stone that they would have hit as they were digging for that hotel. And they started digging and excavating and found out that there was a synagogue here and there was the ruins of a city here. The chapel here was a very special place to be, with a fishing boat as a pulpit. And you don't see it very well in this picture, but that's the Sea of Galilee in the background. And I think a fishing boat is an excellent way to use a pulpit, because every pulpit is a fishing boat. That's what it is. And this is the place where the woman with the issue of blood came from. This city is also known for selling salt, and it was carried carried on from the Mediterranean Sea through a nearby mountain pass, and it was used in the preservation of fish from the Sea of Galilee. And our guide suggested that when Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth," from the Mount of Beatitudes, that he very likely pointed toward Magdala, because you can see it from there. Also, and this was one of the things that made this picture of the woman with the issue of blood was in the basement of the church there that we were in. But in the basement of this church, these are the original stone streets of the city of Magdala. And they left those stone streets there so that we could literally walk. When you talk about going to the Holy Land, and one of my teacher friends said, you're going to go and walk where Jesus walked. Well, when you're at this place, you're literally walking where Jesus and his disciples walked. And what a wonderful, wonderful experience it was. Then from there we left Magdala around 3:30, and we headed toward the Jordan River at Yardenette. And this is the place where you can see that the water is much cleaner here than it is down where Jesus was baptized. And this is where they do all the baptisms. There were 39 of us that were baptized here at Yardenette. And I told the preacher, I said, I'm not going to make you get in the water and baptize me, and so I said I'll let Brother Ralph do it. But we had a wonderful baptismal service there, and you can see him up there taking pictures. Our next day, we drove through Cana of Galilee on our way to Nazareth. And just outside of Nazareth, we visited Mount Precipice. And this mount is thought to be the place where the angry folks in the synagogue in town threatened to push Jesus off and to kill him. This is also the overlook of the Valley of Megiddo, also known as the Valley of Armageddon. And so you can see the picture there from the overlook. And Pastor, tell me what this plant is up here on the right-hand side. That's the mustard seed plant. I knew you had told me and I'd forgotten, and I'd taken a picture of it, so I wanted to include it. So there's a mustard seed plant that we saw while we were at the overlook there at the overlook of the Valley of Armageddon. This is Nazareth Village, and it is a recreation of Nazareth from the days of Jesus, complete with people in period clothing, and they showed us how some of the chores would have been done during that time and how they used the period tools. You can see a woodworker down here working on the bottom. Here's what a tomb would have looked like with a stone in front of it and a sheepfold, and you can see a grape orchard there and cabbages growing, and this is an olive tree up there, and so many different demonstrations that we had. On this next slide, you're going to see a lady who was teaching us about weaving and how they would weave cloth. And then a few weeks ago, I talked to you about the olive press. Well, these other pictures, the three across the bottom, are of the olive press. And you see the little donkey there, and he's pulling the mill wheel that would crush those olives, and then those olives would be placed underneath the press, and they would hang those weights on that beam, and they would press the olive oil out of that. And we talked about just a few weeks ago how in Gethsemane that Jesus was pressed. Gethsemane means olive press, and so that's what you're seeing there. And so I wanted you to be able to see the pictures of what we were talking about of the olive press. And then up at the top you'll see a picture of what the synagogue would have looked like during Jesus' time with the scroll that would have the scriptures on it. From there, we went to Caesarea by the sea. The picture here, you see the great amphitheater that's there, and the picture that you see up here at the other on top is the ruins of Herod's castle, and this is a massive aqueduct that supplied water. And this aqueduct supplied water to Caesarea by the sea from 7 miles away. And so we were able to go and visit the aqueducts and see them. Our next stop is the Shepherd's Field. This is in Bethlehem, and this is widely accepted as the place where the angels appeared to the shepherd, and to the shepherds. And there's a beautiful chapel with 3 huge murals inside that I didn't take many pictures inside the churches, but I want to point out the murals that are inside the church in just a few minutes. But here is the Shepherd's Field, and as we were thinking, as it's coming up on Thanksgiving and then Christmas time, about those shepherds sitting out on those hillsides and the angels coming and visiting them and making the announcement that the Lord Jesus Christ had been born. The other thing I want you to notice is all the houses and all the development that's in the background. We were just amazed by all the traffic that we saw and all the people that are living in Israel. The Jews are returning to Israel, and again, prophecy is being fulfilled in that, and we were just we laughed. I wouldn't have wanted to have been driving. We laughed many times at the way cars whipped in and out of traffic, and our bus drivers, it didn't faze them at all. Here's another picture of the Shepherd's Field. And at Shepherd's Field, we have the wrong picture of what the nativity scene would have looked like. This is a manger and the entrance to a cave that would have been a stable cave, like the cave that Mary and Joseph and Jesus would have been in. And so we have this idea of what the manger would have looked like, and we have this idea that it was a barn, but it wasn't a barn, it was a cave. And so that's what we're seeing here in these pictures. Here's another, up on the top left-hand side, here's another one of those caves. They had converted into a chapel, and we weren't able to go inside. They were having a mass in there, and so we weren't able to go in. But there was a couple of these caves that you were able, if groups weren't in there, that we would have been able to go in and see. And so I wanted you to see that. And this is the church at the Shepherd's Field. And you see the statue there of the angel outside of the church. And inside of the church, there were unique pictures of the shepherds. First, being visited by the angels and the Holy Family. And so you see them, you see the shepherds being visited by the angels. You see the shepherds then visiting with the Holy Family. And then you're going to see them as they're rejoicing as they go away. And Brother Ralph said, now be sure to pay attention to these pictures, because in every one of these pictures there was a dog. And in each painting, the dog has a different expression, a different reaction in each painting. And so when the shepherds were afraid, there you see him on the left, the dog is afraid. And the second scene is with the shepherds in the manger, and you see him there in the manger, in the stable, in the manger scene. And then when the shepherds rejoice, you see the dog rejoicing there. And so that was a unique thing about each one of those things that was pointed out to us, each one of those pictures. Our next stop, we had a very unique opportunity, an opportunity that most groups will not have. We were able to go to the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. And at the Knesset, we had a private meeting with Rabbi Yedidiah Glick, and he's been a member of parliament since 2016. And we had a wonderful time. He wanted us to sing to him there. And so we sang while we were in there, and he shared with us about the nation of Israel. He asked us to pray for Israel, and he was a fired up individual about the Old Testament, and we enjoyed spending time talking to him. And I bought his book. He was very gracious to us. He signed every person's book that wanted it signed, took pictures with everybody that wanted to have a picture made, and so we had a wonderful time there in the Knesset. And his book is excellent on the Temple Mount. He's an expert on the temple, and he's got an excellent book about the Temple Mount, the history of the Temple Mount. And another thing that we were able to do was the first time that any group would have an opportunity to do this, because it was the first time that it was there. We were able to visit the new American Embassy at Jerusalem. We were not able to go in, but we were able to go out, to be outside, and they were very strict about what kind of pictures that we could take there. They mainly wanted us only to take pictures of the seal and take pictures. We could take pictures of where it talks about it being the Embassy of the United States of America at Jerusalem. And so we were able to take pictures of that and to take pictures of the American and Israeli flag together. And so we were blessed to have that opportunity. And that was the way that we closed out our day. Our first stop the next day is going to be the Temple Mount. We entered through the Dung Gate and made our way to the Temple Mount. The security is very heavy as you're going into the Temple Mount. We couldn't carry any Bibles with us. They told us not to carry any bags. We carried just the bare minimum that we could carry with us. And this is the Muslim Dome of the Rock. This is the rock where we believe that Abraham offered Isaac as a sacrifice. The Muslims believe that Abraham offered Ishmael there, but this is the Muslim Dome of the Rock. And we took a group picture there. By the way, we took a group picture of the Jordan River as well. And I've got those laying on the table at the front. If you would like to take a look at those, they were too big. I was going to put them in at these places in the slideshow, but they were too big for me to scan with my computer. And so if you'd like to see the whole group of us, I've got those laying up here on the table in front that you can see after church. Here's another picture from the Dome of the Rock. And by the way, the Jewish tradition is that God created this rock first, and He stood on this rock to create the rest of the world, that He created the world from here. Now, this is a small kiosk that's built over what we believe to be the site of the Holy of Holies. Brother Ralph said that the workers who built the great courtyard around the Dome of the Rock built this little kiosk, this little wall around this spot to warn people because they said when they walked over that place, it felt like there was some electricity every time they walked over that spot. This is also known to the Muslims as the place of spirits, and so we visited this place while we were up on the Temple Mount. And we also visited the Eastern Gate. We've sung that song for years and years, just inside the Eastern Gate. Well, here we are, just inside the Eastern Gate. This is Bethesda. In the Pool of Bethesda, we know that Jesus healed a man here that had been by the pool for 38 years. And as we were leaving, we left out of the gate known as, this is Stephen's Gate, St. Stephen's Gate, because this is where Stephen was stoned. It's also called the Lion's Gate. If you'll notice at the top of the gate, you'll see those lions that are there at the top of the gate. And this is also the location of the 6-Day War. And Brother Ralph told us that if you'll pay attention, you can see the bullet holes that are in the wall there, because this is the place where the 6-Day War took place. And I'll also want you to notice that car that's driving in there. They drove on those narrow streets, and one car, when they were coming out, scraped their car on the side of one of those gates as we were coming out. They travel on some narrow streets inside the old city. Our next stop is the Mount of Olives, and here's Brother Ralph teaching from the Mount of Olives. And we walked the path that Jesus walked, to the place where he wept over Jerusalem. And on the Mount of Olives, there's a massive Jewish cemetery. You can see the burial plots that are out there. And we were told the burial plots sell for $5,000. And history suggests that when Jesus said that the rocks will cry out and worship me, that he may have been referring to these gravestones. And again, here's the outside of the Eastern Gate. And you can see those cemeteries outside the Eastern Gate. And the Bible tells us that Jesus, when he returns, is going to step on the Mount of Olives, and he's going to come through the Eastern Gate. And they've built those cemeteries out there because they think a holy man won't step on a grave. Well, the grave's not going to stop him. The grave didn't stop him when he was here. It's not going to stop him. They bricked up the walls to try to keep him coming through. He's going to come through the Eastern Gate one of these days. Then it was back to the old city and to the entrance of the original temple. This is the teaching steps of Jesus. This was the commoners' entrance to the temple. And Winston told us a story that Neil Armstrong came over and he said he wanted to know a place where Jesus most definitely would have been. And they brought him here to the teaching steps going up to the Temple Mount. They said he got down and kissed the steps there. This is where Jesus would have been brought, and we talked about in the Christmas story, this is where he would have been brought whenever he was coming to the temple for the very first time here on the teaching steps. We finished our day at the Western Wall, otherwise known as the Wailing Wall. Wow. We had a tremendous time there. The tradition is when you come to the Wailing Wall that you write your prayer requests down and you leave them in the wall. And we were able to watch the folks pray. I've got some more pictures that I can show you from the Western Wall. We even went in. There's a tunnel on the men's side of the Western Wall that you could go into, and there were places in there where they had their books of prayer and things like that we were able to see, but we had just a wonderful time. We actually went back the next night. Several of us did. We walked back down again and spent one more time at the Western Wall before we returned home. But we finished our day on this day at the Western Wall. The next day, we began our next day at the Garden of Gethsemane. This is the church at the Garden of Gethsemane. And we saw one of the oldest olive trees in all the Middle East, and experts agree that this tree is over 2,000 years old. This is right outside the church. We saw the rock of agony. This is the rock that it's believed that Jesus prayed on in the garden. And again, they were having a mass, so we couldn't get too close, but you can see the rock there just right in front of the pulpit that's there. And we had a wonderful time of prayer and meditation in a private garden there at the Garden of Gethsemane. From the Garden of Gethsemane, we made our way to the house of Caiaphas, the high priest. This was the place where Jesus was first brought after being arrested. These are the original limestone steps that Jesus would have walked coming out of the Kidron Valley up to the house of Caiaphas. Caiaphas' house, by the way, is also the place where Jesus was denied by Peter 3 times. And we shared a very special moment with Brother Ralph at the bottom of the pit where Jesus would have been lowered into in hell. This is showing the hole that they would have lowered him down in. And after having just a touching moment of remembrance of how Jesus came to us in the pit of sin, we sang, "Love lifted me." We went from Caiaphas' house to the Antonia Fortress. This is where Jesus was brought before Pilate. This is the flagstone street that was there. This stone is the place where the soldiers, this would have been one of the soldiers' games. If you can see the circle, it's a little bit hard to see in that picture, but if you can see the circle there in the picture, this was where the soldiers played their games. And from there we made our way to the Garden Tomb. And we saw Golgotha, and this is going to be our last stop for the day. Here it is, the place of a skull. Yeah. You can see the skull in the rock there. Yeah. And another picture of it. And one of the things that our guides told us that I'd never thought about is that they think that Jesus was probably crucified out in front of this place of a skull, that he was probably crucified right at the street level because the Romans wanted to make an example of those that they were executing. So he was probably crucified there right in front of the place of a skull. And then this is the Garden Tomb. This is where we believe that the tomb of Jesus is. And you say, well, why do you think this is the tomb of Jesus? Well, it was outside the city. You've heard the pastor say it before, that the first time he traveled to the Holy Land, he went to some of these places, and they said this is where Jesus was crucified, and it was inside the city, and this is where he was buried. This is outside the city. It's within walking distance of Calvary. And in Mark chapter 16, verse 5, it says, and entering into the sepulchre, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, clothed in a long white garment, and they were affrighted. And when you go into the tomb, the place where the body would be laid is on the right. And that was one of the things that our guide there at the Garden Tomb pointed out to us. And so this is inside the tomb, and the tomb is empty. This is a gravestone. This is not the stone that would have been at the Garden Tomb. They don't have that stone, and it's not the size. It's a little smaller than would have fit at the Garden Tomb, but this was an authentic gravestone. This is where we ended our journey. We had a wonderful communion service. This is our group, and the pastor took this picture. I think this is at the Garden Tomb. It might be at Gethsemane, but I think it's at the Garden Tomb. And this is our group. We had a communion service there, had a wonderful service there. And then it was time to get up early in the next morning, and it was early the next morning, and make our way back home. But this is just there's no possible way to tell you about everything that we saw and everything that we were able to do, but I wanted to try to give you just a kind of a day-by-day overview of the things that we were able to see and do in Israel. And so can we get somebody to get the lights, and I'll show you a couple of things I brought that you can look at if you'd like it to look at. I didn't buy many things. I bought a few things while we were there. He's looking for the lights back there. This is a Jerusalem cross made out of olive wood. These are only found in Jerusalem, and the cross in the middle stands for Jerusalem. The four crosses on the outside are for the four corners of the earth of the four Gospels, and so this was one of the things that I brought back. And this is an oil lamp. And this was given to us at Nazareth Village. They gave every one of us that traveled with us one of these little clay oil lamps to bring home. And so I thought you might be interested in seeing it. And of course, this is just a small menorah. I wanted to bring a menorah home. I didn't want to bring a big one home. They can get kind of expensive, but this is a small menorah. And everybody knows what this is, right? Shofar. And so I wanted to bring one of these home as well. And you can get much larger ones of these. You can blow it? I can blow it. I was hoping nobody would ask, but I have learned how to blow it. We'll see if I can get anything to come out of it. Let's see right here. I can do a little better, but I'm not going to try to right now. But I can blow it. But you can see that. And some of you asked me about the book that I made. This is the book, and it's got some of the pictures that you saw in there. Again, there's no way to put all the pictures of all the places we went, but if you'd like to see some of the places, some of the scripture that goes along with some of those places, we put together this book with that from some of the pictures that we had. And there's also a prayer shawl up here if you'd like to take a look at it. And of course, our two of the three group pictures that we had made are right there. So that's just a little bit about our trip to Israel. And again, I want to thank the church from the bottom of my heart. It's meant a great deal to me. It's something that I will never forget. And I hope I can go back one of these days. But I thank you for providing this opportunity to me, because as far as I'm concerned, it's a fulfillment of a lifelong dream. And I thank you. Thank you so much. Pastor.
Thank you, John.